What's going on, everybody? Homero Corona, real estate investor since 2018 that we focus on creative financing, note investing, and I'm here with a really good friend, Joe, business partner and friend. And Joe, one of the biggest questions that people have is, oh my gosh, like I would love to be a note investor, but I'm just so scared. What happens if they stop paying? Let's go ahead and answer that question, Joe. What happens if a potential borrower stops paying on that note?
If I own the note, I do what a bank would do. Banks have entire bureaucracies set aside to handle those specific cases. If they're 2 weeks late, you'll send a letter. If they don't respond to that letter, you send a follow-up letter. And here in Texas, after about 2.5 months, you can begin taking that property back if you have to. Now that's a last resort. Neither of us are the type of personality that are going to throw somebody out on the street. If there are ways around that, we can possibly restructure the loan. If they've come upon hard times, a recent operation or something like that, maybe we temporarily kick those payments to the end of the loan. They call that forbearance.
Right.
We can do things like that. There are often options that we as private investors have that a bank's bureaucracy just isn't going to be able to do.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many creative ways that you can do, but what I want people to really help, hone in and really understand is when you're becoming the bank and when you're offering financing to somebody that's buying a potential property, one thing that you have to realize is what happens typically on the worst case scenario route where somebody does and it ends up getting foreclosed on because you couldn't come to any type of an agreement or they just went MIA for whatever reason. What happens is that whenever somebody's buying a home, right, based on credit, there's gonna be some sort of down payment. Now we talk often, Joe, that we like to get about 15 to 20% of a down payment whenever we can. So what that does is that creates equity, right? The more down payment that borrower is able to give initially is gonna create an equity position, right? So what typically happens in a scenario is, let's just say that they gave 15% down as far as the down payment, right? Let's just say they gave 15% down on a $200,000 property. That would be $30,000, right? So maybe the note balance is $170,000. Now let's just say that that person became delinquent after a few years. Now, typically what has happened historically is there's some sort of appreciation. And for those of you guys that know, in North Texas, I mean, let's just say on average, it's probably been, depending on the city, an average of 5% appreciation. But even if it's something a little bit lower, the value of that property has probably gone up a little bit, right? They probably pay down on the mortgage a little bit. So what happens is when it's gonna get foreclosed on, the investors are gonna look at what is the property worth and what is, they're not really gonna care much what is owed, but they're just gonna go off of what can I potentially sell that property, right? So if that property is worth, let's say $225,000, $235,000 and it needs minimal repairs, you're in a good equity position to where more than likely most properties don't even make it at the courthouse steps because another investor typically tries to get in touch with the homeowner to buy the property before it goes to foreclosure. And if it does go to foreclosure, somebody's gonna buy that property. Sometimes they're, have overpaid or paid a little bit above, the fair market value just because sometimes investors wanna keep their contractors busy or whatever the case may be. So we've never dealt with a situation where you had to foreclose on somebody and they're not willing to pay what is owed on the property.
There's another big aspect to delinquency, and that is, as a best practice, we always use a third-party servicer. Third-party servicers are well-versed in both local and federal statutes and laws and regulations pertaining to debt collection. They know how to do the paperwork, generate the letters, they know how to do the phone calls, and they have connections with attorneys that can actually do the foreclosure if and when it gets that far.
Yeah, one thing that we have a separate video that talks about why it's important to use an RMLO. That's something that we'll briefly touch on, but that's why it's important to structure it properly and making sure that they're able to afford that monthly payment, just in case there's any unforeseen circumstances. But yeah, very important to use an RMLO. You can watch the video on what is an RMLO and why it's important on another video that we have. We'll put the link below. So we appreciate everybody that's been following us and liking our videos. It all helps out. So make sure you like, make sure you subscribe, make sure you comment, ask us a question. If we can, we'll get to your question. And if you guys have the ability to come to one of our note classes, come to our note classes. And there's always things that we're looking to do. Number one, we're looking to partner with you in some way, shape, or fashion. We're wanting to monetize your maybe potentially dead leads if you're a wholesaler. And if you're a private investor or you have some capital on the side that just sitting there and you want to get above average returns, or you want to reach out to us, make sure you send us an email. We'll get on a couple of phone calls and see if we're a good fit for each other. So until next time, we'll catch you guys on the next video.